He smiled like he knew her, but she froze like she didn't know him. And the dog, he knew something none of US did. It was 3:12 p.m. when the final bell rang at Meadow Creek Elementary. Laughter and the clatter of sneakers filled the pickup zone. Parents leaned on steering wheels, waving. Minivans idled along the curb. Crossing guards chatted about the weather. The Friday buzz was in full swing. Lucy Carter, 7 years old with pigtails and sparkly pink sneakers, waited quietly on the school steps, her small backpack resting at her feet. She always waited for her mom, Emma, who was usually 5 minutes late thanks to traffic on I-25. But Lucy didn't mind. She liked to count red cars. That afternoon, however, something changed. A man, older, in a charcoal peacoat with graying hair and wire-rimmed glasses, walked up to the curb, calm, collected. He wasn't in a rush like most of the parents. He looked around until his eyes landed on Lucy. Then he smiled and waved. "Lucy," he called gently. "Sweetheart, come here." Lucy stood still, her eyes narrowed. She didn't move. The man stepped closer. "It's Grandpa, honey. Don't you remember me?" That's when Blitz, the retired K-9 from the county police department, who had been lying beside Officer Deanna Rodriguez as part of the school's pause and peace therapy program, sat up like lightning, just hit the ground. He locked eyes on the man. A low growl rippled through his chest, deep, cold, controlled. Deanna tensed. Blitz rarely growled. He was 12 now, calm, trained, and trusted. When he growled, it meant something was wrong. "Easy, Blitz," she said automatically, reaching for his collar. But Blitz wasn't listening. He stood and growled louder. Deanna looked over at Lucy, who still hadn't moved. The man, who now looked more confused and threatening, offered his hand. "Emma called me to pick you up today, sweetie. She had to stay late at the clinic. I'm your grandpa, Joe." Several parents nearby glanced over. One mom paused mid-conversation. Something didn't feel right. Lucy's lips trembled. She shook her head slowly and then, in a voice just loud enough to slice the air, she said, "That's not my grandpa." Everyone froze. The man's smile faltered. "Lucy, I know it's been a while." But she said louder, her voice cracked, "He smells weird. That's not him." Blitz barked, one sharp, echoing command, then another. He lunged forward, pulling against Deanna's grip, hackles raised, eyes locked on the stranger. "Sir, I'm going to need you to back away," Deanna said firmly, moving between them. Her hand went instinctively to her utility belt, though she wasn't a street officer anymore. The training never left. "I'm her grandfather," the man protested, suddenly animated. "I can show you ID. This is ridiculous." The dog's confused. "She said she doesn't know you," Deanna said flatly. "And Blitz doesn't get confused." Lucy had started to cry. Another teacher came over to comfort her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "We've never seen that man before," the teacher whispered to Deanna. Now more staff were gathering. One of them discreetly began dialing 911. Deanna kept Blitz steady, but the dog was tense, quivering with restrained instinct. His growl hadn't stopped. He wanted to lunge. The man reached into his coat. Blitz barked so loudly it echoed off a school building. "Slow," Deanna barked. "Keep your hand where I can see them." The man froze. Then slowly he pulled out a driver's license and what looked like an official court document. "See, my name's Joseph L. Carter. Her last name is Carter. I'm her grandfather. I swear." Deanna didn't take the papers. She waited for the responding officers. Minutes felt like hours. Lucy was still sobbing. "He doesn't smell like cinnamon," she whispered. "Grandpa smells like cinnamon and soap. This man smells like old wood and metal." When the squad car pulled in 5 minutes later, Officer Daniel stepped out, took one look at the scene, and went into action. They separated the man and took the documents. Blitz, now calmer but still glaring, sat beside Deanna, unblinking. Daniel scanned the ID and sent it to dispatch. Then something happened that shifted the tone completely. Blitz growled again, but not at the man at his briefcase. Deanna crouched next to the bag. "Permission to check your belongings, sir." "Are you serious?" the man snapped. "Consent or warrant, you choose." With a huff, he nodded. Fine, but you're wasting time. I'm just here to help my granddaughter. Inside the briefcase, Deanna pulled out a bottle of prescription-grade sedatives, a roll of zip ties, a child's pink baseball cap embroidered with the name Lily. Lucy didn't own a hat like that, but another little girl in Denver did, and she went missing 6 weeks ago. Daniel's voice dropped to steel. Turn around. Hands behind your back. What? You can't be serious. The man barked. Blitz barked again, louder. Final. As the cuffs clicked shut, Lucy clung to her teacher's leg. Her sobs quieter now. That evening, Blitz was fed steak by the principal and given a new honorary badge by the sheriff's office. Lucy sat beside him on the bench outside the school, running her fingers gently through the soft fur behind his ears. You knew, she whispered, even when I didn't. Blitz didn't reply. He didn't need to. He just laid his head on her lap and closed his eyes like he finally earned his rest. The sirens had faded. The squad car that took Grandpa Joe away was now just a memory to the small crowd that had gathered at Meadow Creek Elementary. Most of the parents had left, and the after-school pickup zone looked more like a crime scene than a schoolyard. Blitz, the retired K-9, sat quietly next to Officer Deanna Rodriguez, who was filling out a formal incident report on her department-issued tablet. His breathing had finally calmed, but his eyes stayed alert, locked on the school gate as if danger might return any second. Lucy sat beside a teacher on the front bench, wrapped in a child-sized fleece blanket with the school's mascot, an eagle and sunglasses, on the back. She clutched a chocolate milk box like it was a lifeline. Inside the main office, Officer Daniels paced slowly while holding the confiscated briefcase. The evidence sat on the table under a clear plastic cover. Zip ties, a vial of sedatives, a small handkerchief with floral patterns, and a pink cap with Lily stitched on it. It was chilling. Worse, none of it made sense. Dispatch came back, Daniel said to Deanna as she stepped into the office. There's no one named Joseph L. Carter living in the entire state. Not matching that driver's license number. Not matching that photo. Deanna raised an eyebrow. So it's a fake. Daniels nodded grimly. A damn good one, too. Holograms, laminate, the whole thing. Probably bought off the dark web. We'll need forensics to trace it. She looked down at the bag again. The hat doesn't belong to Lucy. You think it's connected to that missing girl in Denver? Daniels rubbed his temples. 6 weeks ago, Lily Jane Foster, age 6, went missing from her front yard. Similar build, blonde, blue eyes. Parents said she vanished while playing hopscotch. A silence fell over the room, heavy, stifling. Blitz let out a low sigh, his body curled, but his eyes still scanning. Back outside, Lucy whispered to her teacher. Can I pet Blitz again? The teacher nodded, and Deanna waved them over. As Lucy approached, Blitz sat up gently. His demeanor was different now, protective but soft. He let her wrap her little arms around his neck. She rested her head on him, and for the first time that afternoon, she smiled a little. Deanna knelt down next to her. Lucy, sweetheart, she said gently, do you know where your mom is today? We tried calling her, but couldn't reach her. Lucy looked up. She's at work, the clinic. Does she usually call if someone else has come and pick you up? Lucy nodded firmly. She always texts my teacher, too. Every time. The teacher chimed in. That's true. Emma always sends a heads up when someone else is coming. Deanna and Daniels exchanged a glance. Then Daniels' radio crackled. Unit 34 to command. Suspect refused to speak, but requested a lawyer. We're running fingerprints now. 20 minutes later, Carter County Police Department, back at the station. Detective Claire Monroe walked into interview room 2. She'd been pulled off her lunch break for this one. The moment she saw the suspect's face, her instincts started firing. He looked ordinary, soft-spoken, mid-60s, the kind of man you'd see at a grocery store asking where the bread aisle was. But that was what made him dangerous. The forensics report came in. Fingerprints, match found, real name Thomas Edward Langston. Known aliases, 5. Criminal record sealed for years. But the unsealed part told a story of attempted child abduction in Illinois, 1998. Charges dropped for lack of evidence. In 2011, He was linked to a missing child in Oregon, never proven until now. Back at Meadow Creek, Lucy's mother, Emma, finally arrived, hair frazzled, phone clutched in one hand, panic written all over her face. She ran straight to the bench where Lucy sat, holding Blitz's leash. "Oh my God, Lucy," she cried, dropping to her knees and hugging her daughter like she'd been gone for years. Lucy whimpered. He said he was Grandpa, but he wasn't. Emma looked up at Deanna, confused and furious. Who was that man? Deanna gave her the most careful, kind answer she could. We're still identifying him fully. But your daughter is safe, thanks to Blitz. Emma stared at the dog. A moment passed. Then she knelt down and hugged Blitz, too, tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. Later that night, local news at 10 p.m., the evening report opened with a familiar intro. This is Channel 9 local news at 10. But then came the headline. Retired K-9 prevents alleged kidnapping outside Meadow Creek Elementary. Suspect linked to multiple disappearances. Footage rolled of Blitz being given a chew bone the size of a baseball bat, surrounded by flashing cameras and smiling officers. Then they cut to Emma, holding Lucy's hand tightly. "I thought we were just having a normal Friday," she said on camera. "If that dog hadn't been there, if Lucy hadn't spoken up, I don't want to think about it." Back in the station, midnight, Daniel sat across from Deanna in the break room, both sipping cold coffee. "You think this guy was targeting Lucy?" he asked. Deanna nodded slowly. "But I don't think she was the only one." She looked through the evidence photos again. The hat, the child-sized gloves, a digital map of school zones found on his phone. This man had a system, and he'd been at it a long time. Outside in the parking lot, Blitz sat in the back of Deanna's SUV, eyes finally closed, nose twitching in his sleep. He hadn't barked in hours. But if you watched closely, you could almost see his ears flick at every sound. Even in retirement, he wasn't done yet. He didn't make mistakes. He made maps. And if Blitz hadn't growled when he did, no one would have looked close enough to find them. The next morning, the small conference room at the Carter County Sheriff's Office was covered in photos, maps, and timelines. Yellow sticky notes dotted a dry erase board, and a laptop played muted footage from school surveillance cameras. Detective Claire Monroe leaned against the table with a black coffee in one hand and a frown that hadn't moved since 6 a.m. "This guy didn't come for Lucy by accident," she muttered. "He'd been watching that school for days, weeks, maybe." Officer Deanna Rodriguez sat across from her, Blitz lying at her feet like a statue. They'd just reviewed cell tower data pulled from the suspect's prepaid phone. He'd pinged near 4 different elementary schools over the past month. Same time frames. Always during dismissal hours. Always in neighborhoods with high-trust, low-crime rates, where schools didn't have full-time resource officers. Classic predator pattern, Monroe said, flipping through photos. He didn't break in, he blended in. Name, Thomas Edward Langston, age 64. Occupation, unknown. Aliases, at least 5 confirmed across Illinois, Colorado, Oregon, and possibly Arizona. Modus operandi. Poses as family member, waits until dismissal, approaches children with fabricated authority. In the Denver case 6 weeks prior, Lily Jane Foster had disappeared while her mom was inside, signing permission slips. A neighbor recalled a man in a ball cap talking sweetly to Lily on the sidewalk. No security footage, no vehicle match, until now. Monroe pinned a printout of the Meadow Creek surveillance stills next to Lily's missing persons flyer. Side by side, it hit harder than she expected. Same man, same coat, same calm smile. Meanwhile, Lucy was home from school, snuggled on the living room couch under her frozen blanket. Blitz curled up beside her. Emma Carter sat in the adjacent recliner, nervously answering another phone call from the school district. "Yes, we're okay," she said into the receiver. "Yes, I'll be filing a formal statement." "No, she's not coming back to school this week." "Yes, we're considering transferring." Her voice cracked on that last word. She looked at her daughter. Lucy was tracing circles in Blitz's fur. "You know," Lucy whispered without looking up, "I think Blitz can talk, just not with words." Emma's lips parted, but she didn't respond. What do you say to that when it's probably true? Back at the station, Monroe discovered something else. Hidden in the lining of Langston's suitcase, wedged into a false panel that forensics almost missed, was a USB drive. It was encrypted, but the tech team had cracked worse. By 10 a.m., they were looking at dozens of photographs, grainy, taken with a long lens. Kids at recess, kids walking home, kids waiting for buses. None of them posed, none of them aware. Each image was time-stamped, categorized in folders by city: Denver, Candidate A, Ogden Option 3, Meadow Creek, Lucy. It was sickening. He wasn't a drifter, Monroe said softly. He was an archivist. Deanna excused herself, her knuckles white around her coffee mug. She stepped outside to catch her breath. Blitz followed. They stood by the backlot fence, the cold air biting through Deanna's sleeves. She stared at the mountains. "He's done this before," she whispered to Blitz. "And not every kid had someone like you watching." Blitz pressed against her leg. No bark, no growl, just presence. In another room, Monroe clicked through another folder labeled SFX Library. At first, she thought it was unrelated until she played the files. Recordings, dozens of them. Children's voices, giggling, reciting the Pledge of Allegiance, singing ABCs, whispering things like, "He said it's our little secret." The final file was labeled Lily, 6 years old, last wave. Monroe's hand hovered over the mouse. She didn't play it. Instead, she turned to the DA's office and forwarded everything. By noon, federal agents had been looped in. Langston was now suspected in 3 missing child cases and being investigated in connection to 2 others, one dating back to 2007 in New Mexico. An interagency task force was forming. Every alias, every ID number, every vehicle he'd ever registered was being tracked. But no child had ever been recovered until Lucy, thanks to Blitz. Back at the Carter household, Emma was helping Lucy color when there was a knock on the door. Deanna stood outside, dressed in plain clothes now, with a folder tucked under one arm and a soft smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I thought I'd drop this off," she said, handing over a printed certificate with Blitz's paw print in the corner. Certificate of Honor, awarded to Blitz, K-9 retired unit, for outstanding bravery and protection of civilians. Emma looked down at it, then back at Deanna. "Can we frame it?" Lucy asked, peeking over her mom's shoulder. "Absolutely," Emma replied. "It's going on the wall." Blitz wagged his tail once, then settled on the welcome mat, content. Later that night, Lucy left a bowl of kibble by her window. Not in the kitchen, by the window. When Emma asked why, Lucy said simply, "Just in case Blitz wants to guard me from the moon." And so it stayed there every night. But across town, in a small storage unit registered under one of Langston's aliases, the FBI discovered something else: a second suitcase. Inside it, a burner phone with 5 unread text messages, a printed bus schedule with a route to Bayfront Elementary, another school 50 miles away, a photograph of another little girl, same age as Lucy, with a red backpack and a lunchbox that said "Be kind," and one more folder on another USB, Bayfront, Option 1. The horror hadn't ended. Langston wasn't just operating alone. The texts were instructions from someone else. The police had evidence. The FBI had data. But Blitz had instinct. And instinct was faster than any database. It was early Monday morning when the storm started to move. Not the one outside. That would come later with hail and thunder and warnings scrolling across the bottom of every local news channel. This storm started with a photo, a grainy surveillance image pulled from the second suitcase discovered in Thomas Langston's storage unit. It showed a young girl with red hair, a red ladybug lunchbox, and a bright purple backpack with her name written across the front in cursive letters: Maya. Underneath the photo was a handwritten label: Bayfront, Option 1. Bayfront Elementary was a coastal school in our south of Carter County, smaller with fewer cameras. No full-time SRO. It sat in a quiet neighborhood dotted with white picket fences and pastel houses, the kind of place where nothing bad ever happened until it almost did. The FBI immediately alerted Bayfront Police and the school district. By noon, Maya's parents had been called in. They were shaken, confused, terrified. "We don't know this man," her father said, gripping the photo of Langston with pale knuckles. Maya said no one strange ever talked to her. But when agents showed Maya the photo of her own backpack, her face went pale. That's mine. But that's not where I left it." Meanwhile, in Carter County, Officer Deanna Rodriguez sat in the back of her SUV with Blitz, watching the rain hit the windshield. Blitz was quiet but not asleep. He never really slept anymore. Not since Lucy. Deanna rubbed his ears. They found another one, Bud. Maya, red hair, 6 years old. He was watching her, too. Blitz shifted, his eyes locked on hers. No words, just knowing. That night, Deanna received a call from FBI Special Agent Helen Shaw, now heading the Langston Task Force. "You're not going to like this," Shaw said. "There are signs he wasn't working alone." Deanna stiffened. "Go on." "We pulled texts from a burner phone found in the second suitcase. 5 messages. All recent, all untraceable." "What did they say?" Shaw read them aloud. Option 1 confirmed. "Backpack matches. Window of opportunity next Thursday. Low risk. Same method. No deviation. Do not engage Carter Girl again. Too noisy. Eyes on Bayfront. Stick to the list." Deanna let the silence hang in the air. Too noisy. That's what they called Lucy. A little girl who screamed. A little girl who listened to her gut. A little girl protected by a dog that couldn't let go of his training. "Send me the details on Bayfront," Deanna said. "We're going down there." Wednesday, Bayfront Elementary School. It was misty. The ocean fog rolled in from the coast, curling around the swing sets like ghosts in training. Deanna parked in front of the school with Blitz in the back. She wasn't officially on duty, but Agent Shaw had pulled strings. The school board welcomed any help they could get, especially from the dog they'd all seen on the news. Blitz walked the perimeter of the schoolyard with quiet purpose. His nose twitched. His ears rotated like radar dishes. Nothing. Then, near the playground's chain-link fence, he stopped. Low growl. Not like last time. Not loud, but steady. "Blitz." Deanna crouched beside him. He sniffed a specific spot in the dirt, just beneath the edge of a bush. Deanna pulled back the branches. A candy wrapper. Banana Laffy Taffy. Blitz growled again. A few feet away, tucked behind the fence post, she found it. A child sock, pink unicorn print, tiny. The tag said, "Property of Maya." Deanna alerted Shaw and the local PD. The item was bagged as evidence, and cameras were reviewed. Bayfront had only one outdoor security cam facing the rear parking lot. The footage showed a white van idling there last week, engine running for 14 minutes. The plates were stolen. The driver wore a hoodie and never exited the vehicle. Shaw's voice was sharp when she called later. "It's the same MO. No fingerprints, no face, but the timeline fits. This guy has a partner, and we don't know where he is." Deanna glanced at Blitz, who hadn't stopped pacing since they left the school. He was on edge. So was she. That night, Deanna couldn't sleep. She kept thinking of Lucy, of Maya, of the photos on the USB drive, of the lunchbox, the zip ties, the sedatives, of the word noisy. She poured a cup of coffee at midnight and stared at the pinned map of schools they collected from Langston's files. There was a pattern. It wasn't random. Every school had a perimeter fence under 5 feet. Every school was within 1 block of a wooded area or alley access. Every school had afternoon pickup zones that weren't staffed every day. She ran her finger along the coast on the map. Then she saw it. Harborview Lutheran School, just 8 miles from Bayfront. Private, no public cameras. The same van had been reported there 2 weeks ago. Someone said it looked out of place. Deanna felt a chill move up her spine. She grabbed her jacket and Blitz's leash. Thursday, 3:15 p.m. Harborview was dismissing students under gray skies. A line of SUVs crawled through the carpool lane. Teachers held walkie-talkies, calling names. Rain speckled the sidewalk. Blitz sat next to Deanna just across the street behind a row of parked cars. He wasn't looking at the gate. He was staring down the alley. Then he stiffened. A man in a yellow poncho was standing by a green dumpster. He wasn't smoking, wasn't on the phone, just standing, watching the children. Blitz growled, and then barked once loud, final. The man turned, saw them, and ran. Deanna moved like she was still in uniform. She unclipped Blitz, who sprinted ahead like he hadn't aged a day. The leash hit the ground like a gunshot. They chased him through the alley, past trash cans, through puddles. He turned into a dead end. Blitz didn't slow. He tackled the man. Low, textbook takedown, snarling but in control. By the time Deanna reached them, the man's poncho was ripped, and Blitz had his jaw clamped on the suspect's wrist without breaking skin. The man screamed, "I didn't touch her. I didn't do anything." But in his pocket, Deanna found a list. 3 schools, 3 names, 3 time slots. One of them said, Maya, Thursday, 3:20 p.m. Some men lie even when they're caught. But dogs know the truth the moment it walks into a room. The man in the yellow poncho sat in an interrogation room via the Bayfront Police Department. His hands were cuffed, his eyes darted. Sweat soaked through his t-shirt, even though the AC was on full blast. His name, according to the ID found in his wallet, was Calvin Royce Miller, age 52, a drifter, last known address in Bakersfield, California. No active warrants, but he had prior petty theft, trespassing, possession of controlled substances, nothing that screamed child predator until now. Deanna Rodriguez stood behind the 2-way glass with Special Agent Helen Shaw, watching Calvin shift his seat like the metal chair was on fire. "Is he talking?" Deanna asked. Shaw shook her head. "Not yet, but he's cracking." He didn't expect the dog. Deanna's eyes flicked down to the corridor, where Blitz lay quietly beside a water bowl, his nose twitching every few seconds. He'd been calm ever since the takedown, but alert, always alert. Inside the room, Detective Monroe slid a folder across the table. "We know who you are, Calvin. We know what you were doing outside that school." Calvin sneered. "Loitering is not illegal. You weren't loitering. You were timing dismissal. You were watching Maya Sanderson, and you were working with Thomas Langston. You know who he is, don't you?" The name made Calvin's expression twitch, his jaw flexed. "Never heard of him," he muttered. Monroe opened the folder and began laying out photos one after the other. A map of Bayfront Elementary, a timeline with circled dates, the photo of Maya's backpack, the sock found near the fence. "Funny thing, Calvin," Monroe said softly. "Langston had your number saved as Rook. Guess you're his pawn, huh?" Calvin's fingers twitched. "He promised it would be clean," he said, almost under his breath. "No screaming, no mess, just in and out." Monroe's face stayed neutral, but outside the glass, Shaw and Deanna both reacted. "He just gave us the link," Shaw murmured. "Langston's the architect, but this guy's the muscle." 30 minutes later, the room had gone quiet again. Then Calvin broke. "They came up with the list online," he said. "Encrypted forums, hidden invite links. Langston knew the tech side. I just scouted, took photos, watched patterns. He said they only wanted kids who wouldn't fight. Quiet ones, lonely ones." Deanna's stomach turned. "How many kids?" Monroe asked, voice steady. Calvin looked up. For successful, 2 failed. Meadow Creek was a bust because the kids screamed. The dog screwed everything. Shaw cursed under her breath. "And Maya?" Monroe asked. "She wasn't taken yet. We hadn't decided. She was next on the trial list. We were watching to see if she was skittish. She wasn't." "Trial list?" Calvin nodded. "Kids were rated. Personality, appearance, risk level. They had a system, a scorecard, and a damn mailing list." Deanna clenched her fists. Later that afternoon, FBI Mobile Command Post, Shaw assembled a team of agents, cyber analysts, and local detectives around a war room-style whiteboard. "The files on Langston's USB weren't just personal obsessions," she said. "They were compiled for distribution. Names, photos, notes, and a link to a darknet forum called Pavilion." A young analyst stepped forward. "It's password gated, but we cracked it." He typed a few commands and pulled up a browser window. What popped onto the screen looked like a simple chat room. Black background, blue text, anonymous usernames. But the tabs were chilling. Candidate submissions, collection logs, drop schedules, behavior ratings. Maya's name was on the list. So was Lucy's and 8 others. Deanna stared at the screen, numb. Some of the children listed had already been reported missing. Some hadn't yet. That evening, Deanna returned to the Carter home. Emma opened the door with cautious relief. "Any updates?" she asked. Deanna nodded. They caught a second man. He was watching Maya, a girl at another school. "We think he was working under Langston. We also found where your daughter's name was listed." Emma paled. She was on a list. She was their top target that day. They backed off when Blitz intervened. He didn't just scare them away. He broke their system. Lucy appeared from behind the hallway, wearing a Captain Marvel t-shirt and holding a drawing. It was a crayon sketch of Blitz in a superhero cape, standing in front of the school building. "I drew it for him," she said shyly. Deanna knelt down and smiled. "He'll love it." Blitz padded in from the yard and sniffed the picture like it was priceless. Then he gently nudged Lucy's shoulder with his nose. That night at the Bayfront County Jail, Calvin Royce Miller was placed on suicide watch after agents revealed federal charges were being filed: interstate child trafficking, conspiracy to commit abduction, and aiding a known fugitive. He wasn't smiling anymore. Meanwhile, Blitz was honored in a ceremony held at the Bayfront Civic Center. Kids and parents gathered to meet the dog, who didn't retire. Reporters asked for statements. The mayor gave him a giant bone, but Blitz didn't seem to care for cameras. He only relaxed when Lucy wrapped her arms around him again. The crowd applauded. He just wagged his tail once and lay down beside her, as if to say, "This is all I ever wanted to protect." But in Washington, D.C., Agent Shaw received a new report. A third alias tied to Langston had just been flagged by Interpol. This one linked to a missing child in Prague. The list wasn't just national. It was global. And the network hadn't been fully shut down. Not yet. Sometimes it only takes one voice to stop something evil. Sometimes it takes one dog. But too often, no one hears the ones who've already gone quiet. 2 weeks after Calvin Royce Miller's arrest, the FBI task force had uncovered over 50 pages of logs, image files, metadata, and transaction records linked to Langston's encrypted USBs. Every name, every folder, every rating. They were cataloging a silent war no one had known was happening. And one case wouldn't let Agent Helen Shaw sleep. It was listed under the alias Pavilion, User 76. Inside the folder was only one name, one photo, name Annika, age 8, country Czech Republic, status acquired, Prague 2021. There was no missing persons report filed under that name, no parents on record, no birth certificate found in the usual systems. It was like she didn't exist until they checked the Czech orphanage registry and found an incident buried in archive files, a quiet disappearance marked as runaway. No follow-up, no media coverage, just a line in a spreadsheet. Shaw stared at Annika's photo. Big eyes, curly hair, a tired expression too old for a child. She closed the laptop, turned to her team. This story isn't over. Back in Carter County, Blitz was sitting under a wide oak tree in Deanna's backyard, chewing gently on a knotted rope toy. The yard was quiet except for the wind and the distant sound of a neighbor's lawnmower. Lucy and her mom had stopped by earlier to drop off a framed copy of the drawing. Blitz in a superhero cape with the words, "He hears what we can't." Deanna had hung it above the fireplace. Her phone buzzed. It was Shaw. "We found a girl who slipped through," she said, "years ago. Different country. But Langston's digital footprint goes back that far." Deanna's heart sank. "You think she's still out there?" "I don't know," Shaw admitted. "But I know we can't stop looking now. Blitz bought us time. We use it." That week, federal law enforcement made arrests in Portland, Miami, and Atlanta. Individuals linked to the same network through darknet forums. Each raid uncovered more names, more images, more code files that had once been marked too old to solve. Blitz, without ever setting foot in an interrogation room, had launched an investigation that stretched across 3 continents. And it had all started with a growl. At the Carter home, Lucy returned to school for the first time in weeks. She walked into her second grade classroom, holding her mom's hand and a small stuffed version of Blitz that the police department had made as a fundraiser. Her classmates clapped when she walked in. Her teacher gave her a hug. Lucy, in her usual quiet way, walked over to the front of the class and said softly, "If someone ever makes you feel weird or scared, even if they smile and say they know you, you can say no. You can scream. You can run. You can tell a grown-up. That's not being bad. That's being smart." The room was silent. Then every hand went up and Lucy smiled. In the following months, Blitz became something of a local legend. News crews from as far away as Chicago came to interview Deanna and get a shot of the now famous K9. He appeared in children's books. Police departments across the country requested K9 units be sent to schools more regularly. But Blitz never changed. He didn't care for interviews or bones the size of his head. He only cared about people like Lucy, people like Maya, and people like Annika, wherever she might be. 6 months later, Washington, D.C., a ceremony was held in the Capitol building to honor the Carter County Task Force, local law enforcement, and Blitz. When Deanna stepped up to the microphone, she didn't talk about medals or arrest numbers or jurisdictional victories. She talked about trust. We put trust in uniforms, in ID cards, in handshakes and smiles. But trust has to be earned. And sometimes it's a child or a dog who knows when something isn't right. When everyone else is too polite to ask questions, she looked down at Blitz, seated beside her in his polished K9 vest. He didn't wait for permission. He didn't worry about being wrong. He just listened to what no one else could hear, and he acted. That's what saved Lucy. That's what started this investigation. And that's why he's not just a retired K9. He's a reminder that courage doesn't always wear a badge. 3 months later, Prague. A young girl with curly hair stepped cautiously out of therapy center and into the sunlight. Her name was Annika. She had been found in a hidden safe house used by a trafficking ring tied to the Pavilion Network. A local tip, inspired by the international wave of investigations, had led to the raid. She didn't smile much yet, but she held a postcard in her hands. It had a dog on it, big ears, brown eyes, a gray muzzle, and a handwritten line at the bottom. "You were never forgotten." Blitz's life lesson for the audience. Sometimes we assume danger wears a mask or that it's loud or obvious, but evil often whispers. It smiles. It looks normal. And that's why listening matters. Listening to instincts, to quiet voices, to growls that come from a place deeper than logic. Because silence isn't always safety, and bravery doesn't always bark. Let us raise our kids to trust their gut. Let us pay attention to what doesn't feel right. Let us never ignore the small signs. And above all, let us remember that heroes come in all forms. Some of them walk on 4 legs.